Here we go.
Oh.
Hey, we'd like to welcome everybody to Survivors for another week of the Inspires and the Share for Survivors. We have another survivor here as we speak, and his name is Paul DeMello, and he is a survivor because of the tragedy he's gone through, losing his two adorable, sweet twins. These two little boys, how old were they, Paul, at the time that
They were 13 months old when they both drowned.
13 months old when they both drowned. So what we're going to learn today is basically how he's been able to deal with this tragic loss. And as we know, losing a child just is the suckiest thing in the world. I mean, there's no other words to say it but sucky, right?
Yeah, there's no words that can be put to it, but some people have the ability to put their energy instead of to fear and to anger into some type of good to honor their child. And we're going to talk to someone that's done just that. So we're excited to hear his story and what he's done to honor his two twin boys.
No, thank you both for having me here. We did a little prayer before we started this, and I really needed that. And you said something about anger, and I'll tell you, I sometimes I don't know how I survived those emotions, you know, and like, I want to be transparent. I want to be forthright with everyone. You know, by far the hardest thing I've ever had to do was deal with losing my twin boys. I don't know if I will ever totally recover from this. You know what I mean? I continue to do some of the same things that I did when it first happened, and that was prayer, a lot of prayer. You know, I leaned on God a lot. I cried every single day for 13 months. I don't know what's up with the number 13, but 13 months. I went to bed crying. I woke up crying. I didn't even know that the human being could cry that much, you know. You know, and you know, some people look at me, I'm a tough guy, you know, I got some tattoos, I'm pretty rugged, been through a lot, but it rocked my world, you know. You know, the other thing is, some people know, some people don't, is you know, I've been in recovery now from you know, making some poor choices as a young man. But yeah, I had 9.5 years of you know, no matter what, you know, staying the course, staying true to what I was had sold out to as far as a way of life. And you know, I just celebrated 21 years. So you know, even the death of my children, I was able to persevere, you know, and not go back to the person that I was, you know. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to hurt myself. I became suicidal. I became homicidal for quite some time. Today, thank God I'm not there anymore, you know. And I knew I wasn't alone. I knew there were other people that had been through what I had been through. And I wanted to get somewhere. I wanted to go somewhere. I wanted to do something with the tragedy. I needed to do something with the tragedy. You know, I've always been like a selfless person. I always believed in like service and, you know, helping others. You know, it's like there's something about helping others. You know, it's like therapy. You know, and I knew I wanted to do something. I didn't want other parents to go through what I went through. You know, I was very engaged with my kids. You should have saw how I was. Only if you saw how I was. You know, I was like a lion with his cubs. I was very protective of my kids. I was a worrywart, control freak. And at the end, I was so powerless. You know, when I got that phone call, it was something that dropped me right to my knees. And I remember my oldest son scooping me up and taking me to the hospital. One of my boys went to one hospital and another one went to a different hospital. So they went to two different hospitals. It was almost like my old.
Sorry,
Yeah.
do you mind backing up just a tad and telling these people what your son's names are and also what did happen?
Yeah, Joshua and Christian, Joshua Michael and Christian Gabriel. You know, they both drowned in a backyard swimming pool in the middle of January. Which, you know, today I know John has no season. You know, it's all year round. And to be honest, I'll never really know what happened that day. I know know there was a lapse of time. I know the mother, they were with the mother, and she didn't want it to happen. And even today, I still struggle sometimes on exactly what happened that day, but I try to live in the solution, because I got to be real careful. If I put love in, I'll get love out. If I put hate in, I'm going to get hate out. I try to be really careful with that. I know where they're at today. My faith is strong today, stronger today than it ever was. When it happened, I was really angry, confused. I thought I was a bad person, or why me kind of thing. And I said that for a long time, and then it was like, what's next? What do I need to do? So what I did is I started to get with some people, like the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. I got with some people that had been through what I'd been through, and I wanted to go where they were going. And I saw that they were starting to create nonprofits and organizations to help other families. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I remembered one of the keynote speakers at my first convention. He talked about having the best job in the world, and he said all he does is write checks, for scholarships and stuff like that. And I said, wow, that's pretty amazing. Anyways, I ended up pulling him aside, and I told him that I was struggling in what I wanted to do. Not all of us could just write checks, and he told me, why don't you think about the one thing that probably would have changed the outcome of your situation? And that's from the fence. I really sold out to the fact, the safety fence, that, there was no safety fence around the swimming pool. I really believe today that if there was a fence there, that my kids would be alive today. As far as swimming lessons, they were 13 months old. They were premature. They had a hard time standing. They just, I don't know if they could have been taught to swim or face up, or, the survival rescue skills. I don't know if they could have been taught, but I do know that the fence would have definitely slowed them down. I would have gave the mom some time to locate them, when they went missing. Today I know the first place we check is the swimming pool when a child goes missing. It was the last place that she checked. She checked, from what I understand from the police report, she checked everywhere. The bedrooms, the bathrooms, the garage. She even checked the front yard. And the swimming pool was the last place she checked. Today I just continue to try to be their voice. Earlier I was sharing with both of you how I still struggle today with the timeline of things. Like I just wanted to see the girls chase them around. I wanted to see them, go on the soccer field or swing a baseball bat. I wanted to see them take the field. There's something about twins. They were going to be double trouble. So yeah, fencing, as far as like helping families, like DCF, Department Family and Children, and it's grown since then. A lot of times, people, they just want a fence. They don't really need help, and they want us to be the company that does it, which is really cool. It speaks volume of what we've been trying to do as far as growing. And we used to do like a handful of fundraising. Fundraising's hard. Fundraising's not easy at all. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on. But we're down to like 2 fundraisers that we do. It's a walk and a 5K. And it just keeps, people just keep showing up and keep supporting it. And we're going to continue to do it. We do a bike run, which is pretty amazing. Get a drink of water here. It's pretty amazing. It's actually, it's grown every year. So again, it just tells me to keep doing it.
Totally.
Holly Davison's actually going to be hosting the next one, which is, a big deal for us.
Yeah. So last year, Paul, obviously you probably know this, but the numbers of increased children dramatically increased from last year. And, seeing that because of COVID, a lot of people were staying home because more people were trapped in their houses. They had more of these accidents. What kind of motivation, how did that make you feel as far as your commitment to put in more fences, knowing that, more children are being exposed to deaths in Florida than ever before? through
Well, you know, there's no one single layer of prevention. You know, I'm definitely an advocate for swimming lessons. You know, as soon as they turn 6 months old, you know, CPR. You know, everybody should know CPR. They say even bad CPR saves lives. Those numbers were record high. I've been watching those numbers for over 10 years now. Matter of fact, my twin boys are on the first year that they started keeping track of those numbers. My boys are there. It's public information, and you know, that was a record high. And to be honest with you, I felt like it was a kick in the gut. You know, I pick this up every single day, some way, somehow. You know, it might be just a little Facebook post, or you know, or installing a fence, or giving somebody a scholarship for a swimming lesson. But every single day, I pick this up in some way, shape, or form. I do want to say that, you know, Southwest Florida, you know, Cape Coral, you know, Naples, Charlotte County, you know, there was only 2 drownings, and I say only, right? One is too many, right? But we had almost 100 in the state of Florida. You know, we're talking about children that have died. You know, not counting the ones that, you know, survived and have some type of injury and stuff like that. Really high numbers. I think, you know, everybody's moving to Florida, and they just don't understand the dangers of that backyard swimming pool. And I say backyard swimming pool a lot because that's what my kids drowned in. I know it happens in open water. I know, you know, it happens in canals and ponds and even swales. I've heard of drownings happen in swales, you know. I usually say the backyard swimming pool because that's where my boys drown, and 2/3 of the drownings are happening in backyard swimming pools. You know, I feel like that's the biggest piece of pie right there.
right.
You know, and usually the boys.
Honestly,
Usually
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just saying that's exactly how our daughter died. We were all out there, and we never knew she was out there. You know, we thought she was inside the house and everything, and the same thing happened. And we wish we would have had a few more different things to prevent that.
Safety
you know?
precautions,
safety
yeah.
precautions. So
Tell us a little bit about your foundation.
yeah, tell us the name, why you named it the way you did, and how it has 2 different meanings for it.
You know, we're just sitting in a kitchen area, you know, writing on a napkin and trying to figure out what you wanted to name it, you know, and the nonprofit. JACD is an acronym. It's, you know, Joshua and Christian DeMello, and it also stands for Just Against Children Drowning. It was almost going to be Jesus Against Children Drowning, and we didn't go that route. Then it was like Justice for Kids. I forget what else we were going to do. But, you know, I don't know. I'm about my kids. You know, I miss them every day. But really, I think about all the other kids that have passed. You know, like we had 98 kids die here in Florida to drowning. But in reality, that's 98 moms, 98 dads, 98, you know, grandpas and grandmas. You know, it's a big, big, big number. So, you know, Just Against Children Drowning was simple. It was about all the children that were drowning, you know. Yeah, that's why we named it that way.
So how did you get started on this? I mean, you're going through all this grief. Anyone that has lost a child knows how hard this is. What made you get up out of that such a dark place and be like, I'm going to advocate for swimming? Because it's honestly taken me a year and a half to even go into swimming because I've been so terrified to address the whole idea of why my daughter passed away.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we're even having this conversation. You know?
I know.
Half the time I don't know. Half the time I didn't know what I was doing. I want to say God was leading me. You know, for real. You know, it was about a year, maybe a little more than a year. I couldn't even get out of bed. Like it was like my legs were cut off. You know, but there was something about helping others that just. And not only that, like I didn't want their death to be in vain, you know. I also didn't want to stop hearing their names, you know. And sometimes I feel like that's my biggest motivation is I want their memory to stay alive. You know, I want to hear their names, you know. And that's for me. I don't know how everybody grieves differently, I guess, you know. For me, it was really important that I honored them. It was really important that I did something about the worst day of my life.
Well, it's people like you who are definitely making an impact in other people's lives. And I will tell you, it's because of this month and Jim Peacock saying, I want to talk about this, and bringing all the people who've dealt with drowning, that I even became interested in learning, because it hurt. It hurt me even thinking that I had to address that. So know that you are making a difference. And for me, I'm getting my fence. I'm getting my kids into my next child into swimming lessons, because I'm so adamant about it. And I love what you guys do. You guys are giving scholarships out to these families who can afford it for fences through life saving.
Wow.
And we are one of the beneficials of these. We'll be getting one in a few months. And I talked to you about it. I talked to a few other people, and that's like phenomenal what you guys are doing. Can anybody get this, or is it only in your Charlotte area?
No, it's a worldwide program. Eric Lipton, the owner of Lifesaver Pool Fencing, is really the mastermind behind that. And he gave me a title of Chief Giving Officer. It's a pretty cool title.
I just talked to him on the phone, and he actually said, that's actually the man. You talked to the man.
Yeah. He's being humble. He's the man, not me.
Well,
I'm just a daddy. I'm just a daddy on a mission. Although I'm the guy that usually has to pick the phone up and have those conversations with the family that just lost a child. And a lot of times they don't want a fence. They want to put dirt in the pool or move away, we need to be more proactive, and people say, why wait until after the child dies? Well, a lot of times there's siblings, you know what I mean, that are there that we want to protect, or the child survives and goes to the hospital, and hopefully by the time they come home, there's a fence around the swimming pool. Yeah.
Well, the other thing I just want to point out that sometimes this awareness, we don't realize that, like I have this saying, says, ignorant isn't bliss when it means that you lose something that you love. And sometimes people don't realize being ignorant when it comes to swimming could cost your life. And that's what me and my wife, we were absolutely ignorant. We didn't no idea. We thought that we were doing good because we put a life jacket on time.
The wrong life jackets.
And we thought we did it well because we had locks in the doors, but we didn't realize that, like, no matter what you do, if you don't have something to protect it, or as you said, there's different avenues, we can't be naive to think that this can't happen to me, because it did happen to us, and it can happen to anyone. And that's the thing. I'm so thankful for people like you to spread the information and say, look, I'm just an average guy like everybody. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. So don't be ignorant. Let's be proactive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's something about both of you that you got strong spirits, and to be doing this already, and to even to like own up on some of that stuff that you're talking about, it definitely seems like you're embracing this. I'm so sorry that we're even having this conversation. I know for me, it was the darkest place I've ever went. The darkest place I ever went. Like, the light of my life times two. The light of my life times two was ripped from my arms in a blink of an eye. And I never thought it would happen to me, and I see a lot of people think it's not going to happen to them. They think like it only happens to, bad people or other people, in some far off distance place, those are the people I worry about the most, the ones that are constantly, worried about their child being the helicopter mom, I feel like they're the ones that chances are nothing's going to happen to them, although it does sometimes. All it takes is 30 seconds, they say.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, just kind of wrap it up. I just have questions. So people that are listening, so what's the national organization's name, and where do they go to get this information about this?
To help prevent drowning.
Well, the first organization I reached out to was the National Drowning Prevention Alliance, and within that organization, there was Families United. It wasn't named Families United then. It was JACD, a Journey After Drowning experience, and now it's the Families United. Just a bunch of family members coming together with a bunch of solutions for the same problem, because there's really no one silver bullet. It's about multiple layers. it's about continuing to have this conversation over and over again. Even if numbers are going down, we continue to have the same conversation. I usually like to say it's about putting a tattoo on people's foreheads, because at the end of the day, it's about saving little ones' lives,
Right.
And then as far as the Lifesaver pool fencing, you can reach out to either Eric or myself. Our website is justagainstchildrendrowning.org. If there's, a family that has been affected by a fatal or non-fatal drowning, we will get their pool fenced off. And if there's someone that needs
100%
help,
on that. They are providing us a Lifesaver, the best quality fences you can get. I've only heard good reviews about it, for free because we lost a child. And that is like a huge gift, knowing, oh my gosh, someone else cares enough to do that for us,
Yeah, that was touching.
that's huge.
That was touching.
absolutely.
So,
Again, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, is there anything, a final message you kind of would wish that people can kind of take away from your experience that, you wish they could just, like, this is my main point that I would like to hit home to individuals today?
Drowning knows no season. It don't discriminate either. It can happen to anybody. Somebody that's very well educated, someone that's not very well educated, somebody with a lot of money, somebody with no money, it don't care, and that body of water is very dangerous. And to educate yourself, whether you're on the water, around the water, or in the water, educate yourself,
Yes, I love that. One last thing is, there's so many women that advocate about this. What about the men and the dads? Where's their group, or where can they feel like there's a spot for them?
Listen, there's definitely a spot for them. Everybody grieves differently. Like they say, men grieve different than women, and it takes a certain kind of person too. A lot of people just, after they lose a child, they want to go right into the grave after their child. And there's a lot of ways people can do that. A lot of ways they can act out. But if somebody really wants to do something, I would suggest they, check out the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. There are other men, there are other dads out there. They could reach out to me. I mean, I got a big network of men, and I'm talking about men that have lost their children directly to a drowning, that are doing amazing things today. Not necessarily the pool fencing. Maybe it's a swim center or swim school, or they're actually getting in the water and teaching other people's children how to do face up first, or infant survival skills.
So with that, what would be the challenge that you give to all the survivors that are listening today, for all those people who have lost already, or start dealing with grief or some kind of loss? What would be the challenge that you give to these survivors?
I would say to somehow, make that journey from your head to your heart. That if you put love in, you will get love out, and if you continue to put hate in, you're going to get hate out. It's been a long road, and I don't ever want to judge anybody. I just want to look at myself. There were a lot of times there where I showed my backside. I was so angry. I was just so angry. And sometimes today I still get angry. I want my kids here with me.
Yeah.
I want them here with me, But if you can put some love in, you'll get some love out, do the next right thing, I believe my.
Well, there's a picture of your two boys. I don't know if you have it.
Yeah. Even people that don't like the Patriots like that picture. They love. I can't tell you how many people that they just hate the Patriots, but they love that picture.
Yeah.
Those are some cuties. So like I have here, it's Just Against Drowning. It's JACD is his foundation. There's a Facebook page. You can follow him personally on Facebook. There's so much resources that I am learning about, and I am on this journey too. I'm just the beginning of this journey, and I'm feeling very much what you're feeling. You are at a much bigger despair, but I'm just learning right now about what I can do. So thank you so much. Contact
Paul. He's like my new hero. I love guys that like have decided to do something good, because I agree. It's so easy to wanting to do something bad, because when you feel so much pain and anger and really just madness in your soul. But if you could put something good in this world, I love that you can get something good back. And I hope our daughter, and I hope all of our children that are watching us, I always say at one time in life, they're going to look at us when we die and they're going to ask, like, what did you do after I left? Did you make this world a better place or a worse place, Dad? Tell me. And I hope I can say, Dad, my children say, you made it a better place. So I love that message. Thanks for sharing that with us, bud.
Well, I know Joshua and Christian are super proud of you, and they love you. And thank you for sharing your story with us about them and you. And I'm sure they are listening today too. And just say, Dad, we love you.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you so much.
These guys are awesome, and I love these guys back. Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Join us
awesome.
next week on Survivors as we talk more about this. And thank you for tuning in for this week.
Thanks, you guys.
Yep.
Talk to you later, Paul. Thank you.
See ya. Yep.
Cool guy.